think I'm going to stay up for a bit. At least for another 50 minutes or so. Let's talk about the witching hour.
It is the hour between night and dawn. It is the hour when most people die, when sleep is deepest, when nightmares are most real.
The witching hour is the hour between 3 and 4 a.m. This is a time when the veil that separates our world from the supernatural is at its thinnest. It has roots in the Catholic Church. This is a time when the risk of demonic possession is at its highest. It's also a time when most people usually die in their sleep. And it's when most alien abductions supposedly happen. My introduction to the witching hour was in the 2005 movie, The Exorcism of Emily Rose. I was 14 when I saw this movie, and it scared me quite a bit. It was one of those movies that had me laying awake all night just frozen in fear, like any move I made might trigger something bad to happen. The movie's a courtroom drama about a Catholic priest who's charged with a negligent homicide after a woman named Emily Rose dies during an exorcism he was performing. As the trial goes on, we learn more and more about Emily's story. Her supposed possession starts when she mysteriously begins waking up every night at 3 a.m. sharp, at which point unexplainable things would happen to her. As her possession progresses, a lot of the people trying to help her also start waking up at 3 a.m. and they experience similar strange things. The priest tells us in the courtroom that 3 a.m. is a witching hour, and that demons use this time as a way to mock Jesus' death, which occurred at 3 p.m. Shortly after watching The Exorcism of Emily Rose, I watched the newly released 2009 movie The Fourth Kind, which is a sort of found-footage mockumentary horror movie about alien abductions. The movie follows a psychologist in Nome, Alaska, whose patients are all experiencing the same strange symptoms. Eventually, the psychologist herself starts experiencing these symptoms. She starts having vague memories of dark shapes entering her room every night at 3:33 a.m. The Fourth Kind isn't a good movie, but its horror is really well done, and it certainly had an effect on me that night when I was 14. I had watched it with my parents while on a trip to our cottage, which was in a forest in the middle of nowhere, and I really mean the middle of nowhere. It was just down the road from one of Canada's dark sky preserves, which is a designated area for stargazing that's completely free of man-made light. Needless to say, I went to bed pretty scared that night. It didn't help the place I was in resembled the remote rural setting of the movie. I didn't have trouble falling asleep, but I had a lot of trouble staying asleep. I kept waking up what felt like every few minutes. At one point I woke up, looked at the clock, and saw that it was 3:10 a.m., the witching hour. I started to get anxious. All the frightening things from Emily Rose and The Fourth Kind started flooding my head, but I thought if I stayed absolutely still, I might fall back asleep again. It was completely silent in the cottage, and I don't mean normal silence either. It was so quiet that my ears were ringing. And under that ringing, I started to hear whispering. I tried to ignore it, but I couldn't help but to focus on it. It remained consistent for about a minute, and then for 2 seconds it ramped up slightly, and then it happened. I heard a woman's voice in the room call my name clear as day. I immediately jumped out of bed and turned on the light, and of course there was no one there and the whispering stopped, but my heart was pounding. I went to the bathroom to calm down, but I couldn't fall back asleep. This experience was terrifying. And you know what I did after? I didn't tell a single person about it. I thought that if I did, they would just think I'm crazy. So I kept it to myself until now. This night truly cemented in my mind that 3 a.m. is a bad time. Nowadays, as an adult, I'm not scared of the witching hour anymore, but the thought still lingers somewhere deep in the back of my mind. Today we're going to explore the witching hour in depth. We're going to pick it apart and maybe even try to explain the paranormal encounters this time supposedly facilitates, including mine. But before all that, we got to figure out its history. Like I said earlier, the witching hour supposedly has its roots in the Catholic Church. In almost every website and article that talks about the witching hour, I see a repeated claim that the church apparently banned activities during the hour of 3 to 4 a.m. in 1535. It even says this on Wikipedia, but let's check the source. Alright, it takes us to an article on what appears to be a site that sells beds. This site also has a citation for the same claim, but it's a dead link. Let's use the Wayback Machine to see what this source once said. Okay, this appears to be a blog. The term the witching hour was coined in 1560 by Pope John Paul II. I think they might have their popes a little mixed up. So I just spent way too much time reading about every pope from the 1500s, and none of them said anything about 3 a.m. or the witching hour. In fact, I couldn't find any substantiated source that says anything about any church forbidding activities between 3 and 4 a.m., so it's fair to say that this claim is probably bogus. But that doesn't mean that the witching hour wasn't a concept in this time period. The 1599 play Hamlet makes a direct reference to it.
"'Tis now the very witching time of night, when churchyards yawn and hell itself breathes out contagion to this world."
In fact, it can be argued that the Bible itself makes a reference to the witching hour. Luke 22:53 states, "This is your hour, when darkness reigns." And that's the tricky thing about researching the witching hour. There's no definitive origin to it, yet it's been referenced to consistently since antiquity. And there are similar legends in other cultures as well. For example, in Japan, they have the Hour of the Ox, which is a time of night when supernatural creatures are the most active. You can also lay curses on other people during this time as well if you so choose to. All this makes me think that the witching hour might be an innate human concept. And if we're going to make that argument, we're going to have to once again dive into the world of liminal spaces. I probably don't have to explain what liminal spaces are, considering most of you probably discovered my channel through my liminal space video, but just in case you don't know, liminal spaces are transitional spaces. But they're also more than that. They can be something that's familiar to us that's been taken out of context. The screenshot of a Rick Astley music video. We're familiar with the music video, but not without Rick Astley in it. With just the background, the tone of the scene is completely different. I think 3 a.m. is the most liminal time of day. It's a time when the things we're familiar with in our daily lives take on different tones. Spaces we normally don't think twice about occupying suddenly feel more unpredictable or even dangerous. Normally busy places become abandoned. It's a time of night that almost serves no purpose. Pretty much everything is closed, even bars and clubs. The only people who have reason to be out are people who work nights. If you were to be out during this time and you pass someone on the street, would you be suspicious of them? I probably would be, even though if I passed the same person during the day, I wouldn't think twice about it. There's a common theme in the liminal space community of places at night, such as schools, beaches, gas stations, and forests. There's nothing particularly interesting about these locations except for the fact that they're places we normally only experience during the day. I think school is probably the most common example I see, and for good reason. I'm sure most people have at least one memory of being in school at night and thinking about how eerie it is. Now, I want you to take that memory you have and move the time back from 8 or 9 p.m. to 3 a.m. How would this space change? You would probably be the only person in the building, even janitors wouldn't be around that late, and there wouldn't be anyone outside the school either. There wouldn't be any cars, pedestrians, you would be the only one out of the house. Now, if you live in the center of a huge city or something, then I'm sure there'd probably still be people out doing stuff, but maybe not in every case. This video here shows us the busiest tourist destination on the entire continent at 3 a.m., and it's almost completely deserted. Remember that this is how Times Square normally looks. Look, we can talk about how different and liminal 3 a.m. is until the witching hour is over, but I think to truly grasp it, we have to go and experience this time for ourselves. Okay, so we're in the sort of like busiest area in my suburb, and it's like completely deserted. I don't know if you guys can see, but there is basically no one here. Even if you come here at like midnight, 1 a.m., there'll be some people, you know. There's a few bars here, and even those close at 2 a.m. At 3 a.m., there's just nothing. On September 8th, 2005, on this very road at 3 a.m., a woman named Jennifer Teague was walking home from this very plaza. We don't really know too much about what happened next, but Jennifer unfortunately never made it home that night, and her parents report her as missing the next day. Now, Jennifer's missing persons case was one of the most famous not just in Ottawa history, but in Canada's history. It made international headlines for 10 days, until they unfortunately found her body in a park pretty close to here. Now, what made Jennifer's case so infamous, firstly, is because she was the first murder to ever happen in this district since its inception. But it's not just that. She went missing on Jockville Road. Now, this road during the day is super busy. It's a through road. If you were to come here during rush hour, you would see cars backed up sometimes like the entire length of this road. So the idea that someone can actually go missing on this road is just kind of unthinkable. But at 3 a.m., the world is just different. Okay, so you might be wondering, did they ever solve Jennifer's murder? And the answer is yes, they did, in a really unusual way. So, about a year after the crime in 2006, a man named Kevin Davis decided to take some magic mushrooms. He then went out to Fallowfield Road, which is a road not too far from here. He got out in the middle of the road, was blocking traffic. He took off all his clothes and started screaming at the top of his lungs, "It was me! I did it! I killed her!" The police picked him up and naturally they asked, "Who'd you kill, Kevin?" And Kevin said, "Nobody. I was just high on magic mushrooms. I didn't even know what I was saying." So the police let him go. They didn't have any evidence, but they marked him as a suspect. That didn't matter though, because shortly after, Kevin went back to the police station and confessed everything. He had killed Jennifer Teague for basically no reason. He just wanted to kill someone. So the moral of the story is drugs are good. They make you into an honest person. Alright, so I was thinking, what else can I actually do at 3 a.m. that's not just walking around outside? And unfortunately, my options are pretty slim. I could go to like McDonald's or something, but I kind of don't want to go to McDonald's. So I was looking it up, and apparently all the bagel shops are open 24 hours a day for some reason. So yeah, let's go get a bagel. Better get some cream cheese for Carolina. Probably gonna have to mute most of that, unfortunately, because I'm pretty sure that was some very copyrighted music. But we got our bagels and cream cheese, so that's cool. That's something you can do at 3 a.m. Okay, let's try a bagel at 3 a.m. This guy only gave me 2. Did he charge me for 2? Let me check. Okay, so he did only charge me for 2, but yeah, that's kind of frustrating. I didn't really want a whole wheat bagel, but beggars can't be choosers at 3 a.m. It's still great. I mean, these bagels are like crack. You know, there's not really a whole lot left I can do at 3 a.m., I think, so let's go back home. Okay. Alright, so it was Puff Daddy. Interesting. Hey, look, I gotta go. I'm filming a YouTube video. I don't really have time to explain it, but we'll talk later, okay? Alright, yeah, sounds good. Bye. Sorry, guys. I was just calling Tupac at 3 a.m. Remember this trend? It was everywhere back in the late 2010s. Even searching for it now, it seems to still be around in some capacity. These videos don't really amount to anything more than clickbait for children, but they bring up an interesting question. Why is it always 3 a.m.? Why not 2 a.m. or 4 a.m.? Well, there's a pretty good passage from Something Wicked This Way Comes by Ray Bradbury that sums it up well.
Midnight's not bad. You wake up and go back to sleep. 1 or 2's not bad. You toss but sleep again. 5 or 6 in the morning, there's hope, for dawn's just under the horizon. But 3. Now, Christ, 3 a.m. Doctors say the body's at low tide then. The soul is out. The blood moves slow. You're nearest to dead you'll ever be, save dying. Sleep is a patch of death, but 3 in the morn, full wide-eyed staring is living death. You dream with your eyes open. You lay pinned to a deep well bottom that's burned dry. The moon rolls by to look at you down there with its idiot face. It's a long way back to sunset, a far way on to dawn.
We've talked a lot about how the world is different at 3 a.m., but we haven't really discussed how our world is different at this time. We're not out and about, we're in our bed sleeping. For most people, our only experience with this time period comes from accidentally waking up. And I think this unintentional awakening in particular is where the witching hour truly originates from. You're walking outside, but slowly reality starts to fade into a warm darkness. You realize that you're waking from a dream. You're awake now, but with your eyes still closed, you can almost keep the dream going. But every moment it gets further and further away. You open your eyes, but something is wrong. You try to move your arms, but nothing happens. You feel a great weight pressing on your chest, and you can barely breathe. As your eyes focus on the room around you, you notice a dark figure standing in the corner, and it starts to move closer. Panic washes over you as your heart begins to beat quickly, but then you blink and the figure is gone. You regain control of your body, you take a sip of water. What just happened? This is how a typical episode of sleep paralysis plays out. You see, when you dream, your body paralyzes itself, so, you're not walking in your bed. Sleep paralysis happens when you regain consciousness while dreaming, but your body doesn't awaken in time. It stays paralyzed, and the chemicals that make you dream are still flooding your head, which leads to usually one of two kinds of hallucinations. People usually either hallucinate dark figures standing in the room around them, or they hallucinate a dark figure sitting on their chest. The former can be used as an explanation for many alien abduction experiences, and the latter can be used to explain demonic encounters, particularly with succubi and incubi. The interesting thing is, you don't necessarily need to have a sleep paralysis episode to experience these sorts of hallucinations. In the average sleep schedule, 3 a.m. corresponds with the peak of melatonin in your body, and is also when REM sleep is happening. REM sleep, or rapid eye movement sleep, is a part of the sleep cycle where your body truly gets its rest, and it's also when dreams occur. Sudden awakening from this sleep cycle can cause what's known as a hypnagogic hallucination, which is when you're consciously awake but your brain is still trying to make you dream. It usually only lasts for a couple minutes. This is most likely what happened to me when I was 14. I had awoken from REM sleep and experienced a hypnagogic hallucination. And it's not the only time it's happened to me. When I was 19 and 20, I fell into a bad habit of using Benadryl or diphenhydramine as a sleep aid. I would take 2 pills every night and my sleep schedule was awful too. I was in college and most of my classes were late in the day, so I would go to bed at like 3 a.m. and wake up at noon. Benadryl is great at getting me to fall asleep, but it also disrupts your sleep cycle. It greatly increases your risk of having parasomnias, which is a blanket term to describe sleep issues like hypnagogic hallucinations, sleep paralysis, sleepwalking, etc. Every time I would wake up in the middle of the night after taking Benadryl, I would see some wild stuff. Usually it would be things from my dreams somehow morphing themselves into my room, but there was one thing in particular I will never forget. One night I was just falling asleep when I opened my eyes and I saw an old man floating only a couple inches above me. I was so zonked out from the Benadryl that I didn't even react to it. I just closed my eyes tight, and when I reopened them, he was gone. Don't take Benadryl to sleep. There's a lot of data out there about how bad it can be, not just for your sleep, but for your overall brain health as well. If you need a sleep aid, just use melatonin and don't use it every night. Address the root cause of why you can't get to sleep. For me, I just had to cut back on coffee. And you know what? If you see or hear anything weird after waking up at 3 a.m. like I did, it's probably not demons or aliens, it's just your brain playing tricks on you. In fact, some people use these hallucinations as a way to enter a lucid dream, but that's a whole other video. My point is, 3 a.m. is a weird time of the day, but as long as you're home in bed, you're probably safe. Just don't call Tupac at 3 a.m. Thanks for watching.